Good evening to one and all. I'd like to welcome all of you to the 2024 presentation of What's New in JAWS. This year we'll be focusing on JAWS 2025, and it's an honor for us to have you all here with us this evening. My name is Brandon Heinrich. I am the chapter leader of Downstate New York ADAPT and one of the co-coordinators of the Downstate New York ADAPT Transportation Equity Group and Accessibility Working Group. And alongside me, I have some of my Downstate New York ADAPT co-coordinators, and it's a true honor to be here. We have a representative from Southern Minnesota ADAPT who is our certified assistive tech instructor for the evening, who is going to present to us, but we will get to him in just a short moment. I'd like to provide a couple of friendly reminders as you all enter this evening. You are all muted upon entry. We ask that you please remain so until it is time to ask questions. And we're going to get to questions and how to ask questions momentarily. I see people are still joining. I'd like to welcome all of you who are just joining. If you would like to ask a question, again, please hold all questions until the end of the presentation. If you would like to raise your hand, you can simply, if you're a JAWS user, press Alt-Y to raise or lower your hand, and at that point you can hit Alt-A to mute or unmute your audio, and Zoom will actually courteously lower your hand for you. You need not worry about anything. Certain times it will do that for you, so you actually don't have to worry about putting your hand down anymore. It seems to be nice enough to allow you to do that. If you are a Mac user and using VoiceOver, to raise and lower your hand is option Y. To mute and unmute is option A. If you wish to do this on the regular analog telephone, to raise your hand is *9. To lower your hand is *9. To mute and unmute, you'll use *6. If you're using an iPhone, and VoiceOver, you're going to go down to the bottom of the screen. You'll see reactions, and that'll be the place where you raise your hand from in that menu, and then there's the mute and unmute on the bottom of the screen. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce tonight's presenter, who is our certified assistive technology instructor, Chris Murphy.
Sharon Freeman.
He is a certified instructor from World Services for the Blind in Little Rock, Arkansas. He has been through the program twice, and he knows everything there is to know about JAWS and associated products and associated technologies. So he's going to present our annual What's New in JAWS presentation, and without further ado, Chris, the floor is yours.
Well, good evening, everybody. As Brandon said, my name is Chris Murphy, and I would just like to give a quick visual description of myself. I am a totally blind, half Native American male sitting in my bedroom, and I'm wearing a headset. I am an assistive technology instructor, and I went through the assistive technology instructor program at what was referred to originally as Lions World Services for the Blind back in 2006, and then again in 2014, and it had changed over since to World Services for the Blind. In 2006, I became IC3 certified, so I was able to learn ins and outs of computer hardware, how to take a computer apart, how to put it back together, the different types of hard drives, and all of the other stuff that goes along with that, Windows and IP address protocols, and a whole bunch of other things with those certifications. And then in 2014, I came back to World Services for the Blind to go through the technology program again, and I went under some other certifications. I became certified in Microsoft Office to become a Microsoft Office specialist, and I also was certified in JAWS to teach that. Since then, I have been an instructor for the state of Minnesota on and off since 2015, working for the State Services for the Blind, and then I also briefly worked for Blue Earth County teaching technology, and I have taught a very, very wide range of individuals, all the way from beginner computer users all the way up to advanced and someone that may just need a quick refresher. My latest person that I'm working with is actually someone that I'm working with over the phone, teaching technology, and we do everything through JAWS Tandem, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. But before I get into that, I want to talk about why we're here. We're here because every single year, as many of you know, and many of you may not if you are a first-time screen reader user, we're here to talk about JAWS for Windows, or what it's also referred to as Job Access with Speech. And this is a very popular screen reader because it allows someone who is totally blind to use the computer completely without the mouse, with the keyboard using different commands. And Freedom Scientific, formerly Hunter Joyce, and now they're Vispero, so they've gone under some name changes over the past few years, but their website, which I will put in the resources towards the end, is still freedomscientific.com, has been a very, very strong supporter in the screen reader world for many, many years. JAWS actually started out as JAWS for DOS. So if anyone remembers the old DOS days before Windows ever came into play, that's where JAWS actually began, and then it slowly transitioned into JAWS for Windows. Over the past many, many years that JAWS has been around, it has undergone so many different changes and so many different updates. And that's what we're going to talk about today, are some of the new features that JAWS has to offer. A few years ago, Freedom Scientific started changing the way they number their versions. They used to do JAWS 14, 15, 16, all the way back to 4, going back to earlier versions. But since they've changed their versions to kind of match the year, so it makes it a little bit easier, especially for someone that may be a brand new JAWS user and maybe a brand new screen reader user. And I always want to talk about the history of it, just so you have a little bit of an idea of how it started out. And of course, as we all know, computers have changed, technology has changed, our world has changed, so much so that each and every single company, including Freedom Scientific, has to keep up with the trends, as it were. And that's important, because without that, we would all be left in the dust and we wouldn't be able to function. I remember back in the days when I first started using JAWS, back in the late 90s, you couldn't even fill out a form if you were going on the internet, and they have released features to do that. So it has undergone so many different changes, and I think the history of this particular piece of software is an extremely interesting one to see. And I may put a link as a resource to a podcast where some of the individuals who work for Freedom Scientific were talking about how JAWS has evolved over the past 30 or so years. So if anyone's interested in that, I may put that in there for all of you so that you can get an idea, just as an additional resource, just to see where even how teaching JAWS and doing different things with training has evolved since the 90s and going up until now. But the next thing that I want to talk about today is, what do I do when I get either that first DVD, which you could actually get DVDs or CDs back in the early 90s and early 2000s, and I want to install it for the first time. Now, of course, you can download the installer, and they've made it much easier, but before all of those changes started taking place, you actually had to put a CD in the drive and authorize it with a floppy disk. Does anybody remember that? If anyone remembers that and wants to unmute and talk about that at the end, you're more than welcome to do that. Later on, they started to switching to online authorization. But what happens when you open up that box for the first time? You get the email from the company that says you've got the software. If you've ordered it online, or you've talked to customer service and they've sent you a link to download the software, or you're working with your instructor on how to download the software, if they've done it for you or have guided you through the process of doing it, what has to be set up first? So that's the first thing we're going to talk about, is what to set up as we're installing the software for the first time before we get into those new features. So let me share my screen so that you can all hear my sounds of the computer so that we can go through those setup options.
If you lock screen, share application, maximize, choose a layout, share sound, select this option is space checked, select optim, share screen button, enter, ZP toolbar.
So my screen is shared now. So let me actually go to the JAWS window. Now I already have the product installed, but this is called the Startup Wizard, and this allows us to go through those options anytime we want to. So we don't necessarily have to actually install this for the first time, configure the options, and then we can't make a change. We can actually make changes anytime we want to within the Startup Wizard, but this gives us a bit of a glimpse into what you would get for the first time you install JAWS. And you may have, like I said, just downloaded the software and have no clue what to do. But one of the things that I want to mention here before we go through the Startup Wizard is that the installation will speak to you. So you don't have to have it not speaking. When I first started to learn how to use JAWS in the late 90s, that didn't happen. So you had no clue what was going on on the screen of the computer for quite some time until they introduced a feature called Talking Installers. And it was kind of nerve-wracking because you didn't know what was going on. So that just shows you how much has changed. So let's go to the Startup Wizard now and take a look at what you might get when you first open up the installation DVD or the download from the Freedom Scientific website. To do that, I'm going to hold down the Insert key, and remember, if you're using a desktop and you have the numlock on your numpad set to
Numlock on.
So right now, numlock is turned on. So if I press Insert or the numpad 0, it will actually try to input a number here. If you have your numlock set to off,
Numlock off.
this will now act as an insert key. If you have your computer set to laptop layout, and of course most laptops these days actually have a number pad on the bottom right hand side of the keyboard like desktop keyboards do, you will not have to switch it. But if you are using a laptop layout, your insert key will actually be the caps lock key. So what we need to do is we need to go to the JAWS window, because the JAWS window is the whole control panel for JAWS itself. And that's where we find all of these resources that we're going to talk about today in the JAWS control panel, which is the JAWS window. So we need to get to the JAWS window first. So I'm going to hold down the insert key or the numpad 0, and I'm going to press J.
JAWS Professional.
And it says JAWS Professional. If you have a professional JAWS license, that's what it will say when you go into the JAWS window. If you have a home license, JAWS will say JAWS Home Annual. After they started to introduce the annual licenses, they had to make a bit of a differentiation in what the license types were. So that's why you hear that, because I still have a professional license after all of these years. So let's go into the Startup Wizard and see what we can change. In order to do that, I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and I'm going to press the letter H to go into Help. You can also get there using the menu bar as well.
Alt H, Help menu, Command, Search, Insert space, J.
So this is a list of options, and we can navigate this either using our arrow keys or we can use first letter navigation. But for the purposes of what we're talking about, I'm going to actually use the arrow keys to locate the Startup Wizard. So I'm going to arrow up.
Check for updates.
We'll talk about that after we talk about the Startup Wizard.
License submenu.
And some of this also.
Support tool. Startup Wizard.
So this is very important. This is the Startup Wizard. And this is where you can go change all of those options even after you have installed JAWS for the first time and you've configured these things. And we're going to go through them right now. So in order to open this, I'm going to press Enter.
Enter. Leaving menus. JAWS Startup Wizard dialog. Help us improve Freedom Scientific products. Would you like to participate in our effort to improve Freedom Scientific products by submitting anonymous usage data? Participate checkbox checked.
So this first checkbox, and we are now in a dialog box, asks us if we want to help improve Freedom Scientific products. And you may have already seen this if you have installed JAWS 2025. If you haven't installed JAWS 2025 yet, some of the things that we're going to talk about today may or may not make sense. But this particular checkbox was also available in JAWS 2024 when we did the workshop last year. So you don't have to check this checkbox at all. You can ignore it completely. So in order to check or uncheck this checkbox, we would press the space bar. I'm going to uncheck it.
Space not checked.
And to get to the next section in the dialog box, I'm going to press tab.
Anonymous data collection policy link.
So if we wanted to find out more about this, we could press enter on that, but we're not going to. We're going to continue to press tab.
Privacy policy link.
So there's a privacy policy here, just making sure that we all know how private or non-private our data can be and what they may be using.
Next button.
Now, there's two ways we could have gotten to the next button. We're taking the long route here and pressing tab to get to the next button. However, you could also press Alt-N, but because I want to teach the longer way to do this, we're going to press enter. So let's press enter on this to see what other choices we may have.
Enter speech settings. Rate 56. Left right slider 14%.
So the first thing that we come in contact with in the Startup Wizard after we get past all of the survey questions and statistical questions is how fast or how slow do you want your speech to be? Now, if you're a beginner user and you're using JAWS for the first time, you may want your speech to be a little bit slower. So there's a number of ways we can actually adjust this. We can either use our arrow keys and go down.
13%.
I'm pressing down arrow right
12%,
now, and it's getting
55.
slower. And you'll notice it's saying the percentage is decreasing.
11%, 54.
Or we can press our up arrow key
12%, 53.
to get back to 15, which is where we were.
13%, 54. 14%, 55. 15%.
Or if we want to go in smaller or larger increments, we can either press page up or page down. So if I press page up or numpad 9 on the numpad,
25%, 57.
it makes it a little bit faster. But because we're going to assume that you have installed JAWS for the first time and you're a fairly new user, possibly, we may want to slow this back down. So I'm going to press numpad 3, which is page down, to go back to 15%.
15%, 68.
So we've figured out what our speech rate needs to be and whether you want it faster or slower. If you're an advanced user and you're going through the Startup Wizard, you may want it very, very fast. I know some people that have it at almost 100%, and I myself have been a JAWS user for a long time, and I still can't understand it that fast. But the next option that we're going to get to after we press tab
Punctuation.
is
Combo
punctuation.
box. None. 1 of 4.
So this is a combo box, and we can access this either by pressing the up or the down arrow keys to change these settings or use first letter navigation. And what this will allow us to do is we can change it to most, some, none, or all. And based upon your preference, if you want all punctuation or if you need all punctuation, you can change these settings here. So if I press the down
Some.
arrow,
2 of 4.
it'll change to some. And if I put it back to what it was at, which was none,
None. 1
by
of 4.
pressing up, it'll go right back to where it was.
Typing echo characters radio button checked. 2 of 4.
So as we continue through the Startup Wizard and press tab, the next option is typing characters. If you typing echo, if you want this to be set to characters, you have a number of ways you can do this. You can either use your arrow keys to select those choices.
Typing echo words radio button checked. 3 of 4.
So if I press the down arrow key, which I just did, now what's going to happen is after I write a word and press the space bar, it will echo what I've written back. But because I have mine set to characters, I know some people have it set to none, I'm going to put it back to characters. But these are all options
Typing echo characters radio.
Reconfigure at any point if you want to go change them. There's other ways to do this, but because we're going through the Startup Wizard for installation purposes, I just want to take all of you through that. So let's press tab to go to the next setting.
Back button.
So back, if we want to go back to the previous section of the wizard,
Next button.
Next, so we're going to press enter on next.
Enter. Run JAWS settings. If you select Start JAWS at the logon screen, JAWS will be loaded at the logon screen. If you select Start JAWS after logon for all users, JAWS will be loaded after logon for all users. You can also choose how JAWS will be loaded after logon for this user. Start JAWS at the logon screen, checkbox checked.
So this is very important. If you're using your own machine and you want to make sure that JAWS will speak when the computer actually gets up to the logon screen, make sure you check that checkbox by pressing space. Because I have it set up that way, it will do that. If you're not using your own computer and you're using a shared computer, you may have to set this up differently. So let's tab to the next field.
Start JAWS after logon for all users, checkbox not checked.
So this is not checked, and this is not a good thing because this is my own computer. So what this means is when JAWS comes up, it will not start up right now because of the way it's set up. So I actually need to press space on this. So after that, it will actually behave successfully.
Space checked.
Now, like I said, if you're using your own machine, you can configure these options the way you want them to be. If you're not, and you're using a shared computer with maybe a family machine or something like that, you may have to set this up a little bit differently. Remember, you can change all of these options at any point. So let's press tab.
Start JAWS after logon for this user, combo box, always 1 of 3.
So this is another combo box where we can change these settings to start JAWS after logon for all users, and it's set to always for my computer specifically. But if we down arrow through this combo box,
never, 2 of 3.
Never, or if we down arrow again, we can up arrow, of course, to go back to the previous choice.
Using the all users setting, 3 of 3.
Or using the all users setting. So we're going to up arrow.
Never, 2 of 3. Always, 1 of 3.
Put it back on always and press tab.
Run JAWS from system tray, checkbox not checked.
If you run the JAWS software from your system tray, that means that when you go to change any JAWS options, you will actually have to go into the system tray in order to execute those. And if you're a first-time JAWS user, I probably wouldn't recommend doing it this way. If you prefer to set this up this way, that is a choice that you probably could make later on. But remember, you can always change these options at any point. So let's press tab.
Prompt to confirm when exiting JAWS, checkbox not checked.
So this is another important thing. If you press insert F4, it will prompt you to quit JAWS. I have it set so that it doesn't do that. So if I press insert F4 right now, it will not tell me that it's quitting JAWS. If you're a first-time user, or if it's something that you are unsure that you really want to change and you want that prompt, keep this checkbox
space
checked so that it will prompt you when you press insert F4, because if it's unchecked like it's going to be when I uncheck it right now,
space not checked.
When I press insert F4, JAWS will immediately quit. So it's each and every single person's preference whether they want to be prompted or not if they exit JAWS by pressing insert F4 or alt F4 from the JAWS window. And it kind of threw me off the first time when I did it because it went away so quickly. And this is one of the things that they released quite a few versions ago. So let's press tab.
Back button.
So we have the back button.
Next button.
And the next button. So let's press enter on next.
Enter. Common options. Smart navigation off, radio button checked. 1 of 4.
So these are some common options relating to the internet. You can set these how you want to. These are dealing with some HTML options in terms of navigating web pages and forms. So let's up arrow through these just to explore them.
Smart navigation controls and tables, radio button checked. 4 of 4.
So you can up or down arrow through these.
Smart navigation off, radio button checked. 1 of 4.
And remember, you can change these at any point. You don't have to save these choices.
Smart navigation controls only, radio button checked. 2 of 4.
So I'm going to up arrow and put it back to what I had it as. But
smart navigation off, radio button checked. 1 of 4.
You don't have to set this up the exact same way, but you can always recustomize them any way you want to. So let's press tab.
Forms mode, manual, radio button checked. 3 of 3.
So this deals with how you get into forms mode. So let's say you're on a web page and you press the letter E to get into forms mode. I have it set to manual because sometimes when I'm filling out a form, I don't want it to go into forms mode right away. So these are a number of options that you can select if you are going into forms mode. So I have it set to manual. If we down arrow,
Forms mode auto radio button checked. 1 of 3.
so it goes automatically into forms mode when you press E or you encounter a form.
Forms mode semi-auto radio button checked. 2 of
Then you
3.
have semi-auto
Forms mode manual radio button checked. 3
and
of 3.
manual. So let's press tab one more time.
Use keyboard layout combo box desktop. 1 of 3.
So this is the use keyboard layout combo box, and if you were to change these settings, it would alter your keyboard layout. Because I have a desktop, I'm going to leave this alone, but if I down arrow,
Laptop. 2 of
it'll
3.
change it to laptop. But remember, I had said in the beginning of the presentation that
Desktop. 1
most
of 3.
laptops have a number pad on the right side. You do get the few that don't, so you may have to change it to laptop, and that will alter how your keyboard looks just a little bit. So let's press tab.
Use virtual ribbon menus checkbox not checked.
We're going to leave that unchecked, but this is how you would select virtual ribbon menus if you needed to select this option, especially in Word or a whole host of other programs that now use the ribbon.
Initial state of num lock key turn off at startup radio button checked. 1 of 3.
Initial state of numlock key. So this is how the numlock key will behave when the computer and JAWS start up. So if we down arrow,
Initial state of num lock key turn on at startup radio button checked. 2 of 3.
we don't want that. So let's down arrow again.
Initial state of num lock key do not modify radio button checked. 3 of 3.
Then we have do not modify. So this is signifying how the numlock key will behave when the computer starts and JAWS is running. So let's up arrow one more couple times.
Initial state of num lock key turn on at startup radio button checked. 2 of 3. Initial state of num lock key turn off at startup radio button checked. 1 of 3.
And each time I up or down arrow, it's checking those radio buttons because we're still in this really, really big dialog box just going from one field to the next.
Back button.
So let's tab to the next button.
Next button. Enter verbosity settings. Tutor messages turn off menu and control help radio button checked. 1 of 3.
So these are verbosity settings. If you're a beginner JAWS user and you're installing JAWS for the first time, you may have it set so that it announces everything. So let's just up and down arrow through these choices to see what other ones we may have.
Tutor messages announce menu and control help radio button checked. 2 of 3. Tutor messages turn off menu and control help radio button checked. 1 of 3. Tutor messages announce custom messages only radio button checked. 3 of 3.
So these are all of the options that you can have to announce tutor and help messages, and they actually are very beneficial if you're learning how to use JAWS for the first time. We're not going to save any of these changes that we're making right now, and I'll get out of the startup wizard when I get to the end. So let's press tab one more time.
Access key off radio button checked. 1 of 4.
Access key off means what does JAWS tell you when you're in a menu? So I have it turned off so it doesn't give me the access keys or hotkeys for different programs. But if we down arrow,
Access key speak all radio button checked. 2
this
of
means
4.
as I down arrow, it will speak everything.
Access key speak menus only radio button checked.
As I
3
down
of
arrow
4.
again, it'll speak menus only.
Access key speak dialogues only radio button checked. 4 of 4.
So let's wrap this back around.
Access key off radio button
to
checked. 1 of
Set
4.
it back to off. So these are all options that I have set, but as I said before, you can always customize these options no matter how you want them to, or if you are a beginner JAWS user, they may be set up a certain way.
Verbosity level advanced lowest radio button checked. 3 of 3.
So the final thing we have in this particular area of the startup wizard is verbosity level. You have advanced, which will give you basically no prompts when you're going through menus and looking at documents and reading commands. And then you have
Verbosity level intermediate radio button checked. 2 of 3.
intermediate, which will give you some verbal feedback when you're going through menus or looking at different web pages or documents, or even the JAWS window or JAWS menus.
Verbosity level beginner highest radio button checked. 1
And
of
then you
3.
have beginner, which means it will announce everything to you. It'll give you hints. It'll give you information about things that you're accessing, prompt you to press insert F1 to obtain some help about where you are, and we'll do that here in just a bit. But let's down arrow,
Verbosity level intermediate radio button checked.
put
2
it
of
back
3.
to advanced,
Advanced lowest radio button checked. 3 of 3.
and press tab.
Back button.
till we get to next.
Next button. Enter. Braille translation settings. Language combo box. English United States. 41 of 112.
So these final options in the Startup Wizard are if you have a Braille display. I have one, but it's not connected at the moment. So if you needed to configure a Braille display or configure your language settings for the Braille display, you could do this here. We're going to skip this, but we're going to tab through it and have JAWS just basically read some of these.
Output combo box. US English grade 2. 3 of 5.
So these are some of the outputs that the Braille display will display. JAWS supports a wide range of Braille displays, all the way from focuses to those e-readers that you can get from the library.
Input combo box. Computer Braille 1 of 2. Show current word and computer Braille checkbox checked. Back button. Next button.
So if we go to next.
Enter. Braille settings. Braille mode combo box. Line 1 of 3.
So we're going to continue to tab.
Enable flash messages checkbox checked. Reverse panning buttons checkbox not checked. Enable word wrap checkbox checked. Back button. Finish button.
And we're going to press enter on finish. So this will complete the setup of the wizard, but since I don't want to save those settings because I've made some setting changes, if I press enter right now, it will actually save those setting changes, and I don't want to do that. So I'm just going to press escape. If you had made changes and you want to save those changes, you can press enter, but since we're not going to, I'm going to press escape.
Escape. JAWS Professional.
So now we end up back in the JAWS window, and like I said, if you are using a home annual license, it will say JAWS Home Annual just to give you an indication that you're running an annual license. One thing that I want to mention before we talk about the new features is if you have installed JAWS and you're going from 2024 to 2025 and you have scripts installed for Station Playlist Studio or some other product, make sure that when you're installing JAWS, you tab to the checkbox that says do not migrate JAWS settings. Because if you do, between JAWS 2024 and JAWS 2025, all of your scripts will have to be reinstalled. They've made quite a lot of changes with how some of these things are handled, and they may not work correctly when they migrate settings. So make sure when you install JAWS for the first time over the top of the other version that you do not migrate your JAWS settings, because if you do and you try to run a program that you've got scripts for, you're going to get a bunch of error messages. I tried that with 2024 and learned a very invaluable lesson that I had to reinstall all of my scripts. Finally, before we talk about the new features, how do you update JAWS? Back when JAWS first started, and of course for many, many years after that, they sent you either a CD or a DVD with the software on it, and you had to install the newest version. Since the internet has taken over our world and has made things so much easier, they had to come up with a way for us to do it where we could just go into the program. You can still, of course, download the software from Freedom Scientific, but you don't even have to do that. If you want to check for a new update, if you're running 2024 and want to update to 2025, you can do that with just a couple of keystrokes. So let's go back to the Help menu by pressing Alt-H. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and press H.
Alt-H. Help menu. Command search insert space J.
And I'm going to up arrow.
Check for updates.
And I'm going to press Enter.
Enter. Leaving menus.
Now, because there's no update present, it's not going to prompt me to install anything. So there's an error message on my screen right now. So I have to Alt-Tab.
Tasks. JAWS Professional. JAWS Professional. Screen share. JAWS Professional.
Well, it exited the dialog box. But what should have happened is it should have said JAWS is up to date. Or if there was an update, it would have prompted us to download the update. If you're updating from 2024 to 2025 and you do this through the Help menu, you will see an update that says New Major Version. And you can actually download and install the update. However, if you have any scripts or any settings that may or may not work successfully with 2025, make sure you keep the previous version of JAWS on your machine, at least for a while anyway, until you know that those scripts and settings you have will work with JAWS 2025, because there are some things that are still a little bit finicky right now, and it's been recommended that you don't make those changes with JAWS 2025 with the scripts, at least right away. Keep 2024 as a backup. If you even have 2023 and you're still using the scripts or whatever settings you may have, you can keep that also. But don't get rid of your older versions of JAWS for quite some time. Now that we've talked about what happens when you install JAWS for the first time, and we've gone through all the settings that you may have to configure, or if you want to configure them again, we're wondering, what changes did Freedom Scientific make? What happened with JAWS 2025 from JAWS 2024, or even if you're upgrading from maybe JAWS 2023, or even an older version than that? Freedom Scientific, each and every year, releases new features in order to stay with the times and make our lives a little bit easier so that we can stay as current as possible with technology. And we're going to actually talk about some of those things now. And a feature that I find really cool that they actually introduced is something called FS Companion. It's an AI feature, and it allows us the ability to ask it questions by typing in a question, and we're going to demonstrate that here in a second. Let's say we forgot something. We forgot how to change the speech settings or change the volume settings. Now we don't even have to go through all of the ebooks that JAWS has to find all of those answers. FS Companion allows us to ask it a question, and we can actually get an answer back. So we're going to actually ask it a couple of questions to see how accurate it is. And I've done this a few times just to test it out, and you'd actually be pretty surprised at how accurate it is. So we need to actually go back to the Help menu.
Alt-H, Help menu, Command,
By
Search,
pressing
Insert,
Alt-H.
Space, J.
And pressing R for Web Resources. Actually C for Companion.
C. R. JAWS version 2, JAWS. Alt-H, Help menu, C. Leaving menus, search for JAWS commands dialog, search for Escape, JAWS, Alt-H, Help R, JAWS headquarters, C, FS Companion.
So this is FS Companion. This is our little AI tool. And I got to that by pressing Alt-H for Help, R for Web Resources, and C for FS Companion. I haven't pressed Enter on this yet, but we're going to get a bit of an introduction as to what this is. So let's press Enter.
Enter, menu bar, opening new tab, loading page, leaving menus, the web track sample call tracking system Microsoft Edge, the web track sample call tracking system Microsoft Edge page, yes radio button checked, 1 of 2. FS Companion Beta, FS Companion Beta, loading complete, FS Companion Beta, type your question here, edit, blank, placeholder, type your question here. Hello there, I'm excited to help you learn more about JAWS. Here are some things to know about our conversation. Bullet, you can use the H, Shift H and up, down arrow keys to navigate between messages. Bullet, use the new conversation button to start a conversation about a new topic. To get started, just type your question in the chat box below.
So it gives you a bit of an introduction as to what FS Companion is. So I'm going to ask it, how do you do a say all? So unfortunately, there's no way right now to dictate your responses, but we're in an edit field right now, in a form field, to indicate that we are able to type something. So I'm going to say
H-O double space D-O space Y-O-U space O space S-A-Y space L question.
I'm going to press Enter, and you're going to hear it click.
Enter. How do you do a say all? To perform a say all command in JAWS which reads continuously from the current position to the end of the document or window, you can use the following keystrokes: bullet desktop keystroke, insert down arrow bullet laptop keystroke, JAWS key A or insert A. This command will read the text continuously, and you can control the reading speed using page up to increase and page down to decrease the speech rate during the say all operation.
So it gave you the entire step-by-step instruction how to do a say all. This isn't just for that. You can actually ask it about anything, any JAWS command, any Microsoft command that you're trying to remember, because we all know how hard it is sometimes to remember a command. Sometimes I forget commands, and I have had to look through all of the command resources to find it. Now you can ask FS Companion, what's the command for this? So I'm going to ask it another question. I'm going to ask it about how to obtain some context-sensitive help. Even though we know it's insert F1, I want to see if it can tell us how to get some help.
Virtual P wrapping to top. Type your question here. Edit blank. Enter. H O dub space D O space Y O U space G E T space O N T E X E space E L P question. Enter. How do you get context help?
So it's clicking.
To access context-sensitive help in JAWS, you can use the following keystroke: bullet keystroke, insert F1. This command provides specific help for the controller application you are currently using. It offers detailed information about dialog box options, buttons, and other controls, making it a quick way to get the help you need for the program you are working with.
So let's ask it one more question. Let's say we forgot how to change the speech settings. So I'm going to ask it another question, and then I'm going to ask it one more question about an Excel command, actually maybe a Word command. But first, let's see what it says about the speech settings.
Virtual piece, no edit boxes, no edit, no button, no edit, no edit, virtual PC, no edit, send message button. Wrapping to top. Type your question here. Edit blank. Enter. A O double space D O space Y O U space A N G E space E A E space S P E E space E T I S question. Enter. How do you change the speech settings?
Let's see what it says.
To change the speech settings in JAWS, you can follow these steps. 1. Open the JAWS window. Hollow round bullet, press insert J to make the JAWS window active. 2. Access voice adjustment. Hollow round bullet, press Alt O to open the options menu. Hollow round bullet, press V and then enter to open the voice adjustment dialog box. 3. Adjust voice settings. Hollow round bullet in the voice adjustment dialog box. You can choose an existing voice profile or a factory voice profile template. Hollow round bullet, you can change various settings such as language, voice, speech, rate, and punctuation to configure JAWS speech to your liking. 4. Save changes. Hollow round bullet, after making changes, save the voice profile and exit the voice adjustment dialog box. 5. Select a voice profile. Hollow round bullet, press insert
So it's giving us a little bit more information in this case than what we had asked for, but it's giving you all of the steps in order to do something, including the commands. Now,
Virtual PC.
I want to ask it one more question. Sometimes if you put something in there wrong, it may not work correctly. I did it a couple of days ago just to see what would happen. And it actually told me that it was sorry that it couldn't process my response. Let's ask it how to
Wrapping to top. Type your question here. Edit. Enter.
navigate a dialog box.
H O double space D O space Y O U space A V I G A T E space D I A L O G space B O X question. Enter. How do you navigate a dialog box? To navigate a dialog box using JAWS, you can use the following keystrokes. 1. Tab key. Hollow round bullet, press tab to move forward through the controls in the dialog box, such as buttons, checkboxes, and text fields. 2. Shift tab. Hollow round bullet, press shift tab to move backward through the controls. 3. Arrow keys. Hollow round bullet.
So I'm pressing the control key, but it's giving us a very detailed description now of all of those commands. So prior to this, prior to FS Companion being around, we had to do some pretty hefty research to figure out what a command was. So you can ask it anything that you might have a question on. If you've forgotten a command for Excel or PowerPoint or Word or Outlook or Access or anything you may be using, you can come into FS Companion and ask it those questions. However, this only works right now in the English language. They are trying to introduce other languages to this, so I'm sure they will probably update that in future releases. But that's a little bit about FS Companion. I think it's a really great feature because it allows us to be able to look for anything that we may have a question about. Some of you may remember back when JAWS first came out, and of course for many, many years, if we were trying to find something and we had those training tapes and we couldn't remember how to do something, we had to go maybe back to the training tapes or go through all of those help documents. We don't have to do that anymore. Keep in mind, of course, it is still a beta like it had said when we launched it the first time. So certain things may or may not work correctly. So keep in mind that we may encounter some issues. It may not answer our questions the right way sometimes, but at least we have an option to be able to figure out something if we forget it. And I was so excited to find out what this feature was about when they were actually talking about it. I actually didn't download the beta to find out how it worked, but I must say that it is a truly great thing, especially if you're an instructor or even if you're a student and you're going through things and I can't remember the command for this. My teacher's going to ask me about this tomorrow. Maybe I should go to FS Companion and figure it out. So to get there, hit Insert J to go to the JAWS window.
JAWS Pro. Alt H. Help menu. Command
Alt-H.
search insert space J.
And then
C. Leaving menus. Search for JAWS. Escape. JAWS Pro. Alt H. LR. JAWS headquarters.
R for web resources.
C. FS Companion.
And FS Companion.
Leaving menu.
There are
JAWS.
a couple more features that I want to talk about. And this actually might serve some interest for some of us. And this is a brand new feature as of 2025. It's called like week view notification. You can figure out what week of the year you're in. Work week, view work week, or be notified about work week. Let's say you can't remember what week of the year are we in. Are we in week 2? Are we in week 3? Are we in week 5 or 6? Sometimes we need to know that information. Well, Freedom Scientific has introduced a feature that allows us to figure out what week we're in of the year. And this is a bit of a doozy of a command for us to do. So I warn you that you may have to either use 2 hands on opposite sides of the keyboard or locate another set of keys. So in order to figure out what week of the year we're in, you have to hold down the control key and the insert key and press F12 twice quickly.
Week 46.
So it says we're in week 46 right now, which is kind of hard to believe. So if someone needs to know what week of the year you're in, especially if you're working and they may ask you, okay, what week of the year are you in? Or you might just want to know in general. You can find out now by pressing Control, Insert, F12 twice quickly.
Week 46.
And it's a little bit of a difficult command. There are, of course, more than one control key, so you can use the closer one. But that is another feature that they have introduced so that we can make sure that we can figure out, hey, what week am I in? What week am I trying to figure out where I'm at? And I think Freedom Scientific has tried to make sure that they are being as current as they can with technology and how much things have changed. Because remember, Microsoft changes, Windows changes, programs change all the time, and sometimes it can be hard to keep up. All of those individuals that are working so hard behind the scenes that we don't see, making JAWS what it is and has been for so many years, have to keep up with all of those trends and changes in technology. So that's why all of those features are being released. And of course, some of them have been suggested as well. And that's another important thing, is some of those features have also been suggested. Another feature that I want to talk about is automatic language detection. Sometimes when you are going to a site and you're viewing a site, it may or may not switch. Well, Freedom Scientific has changed this option so that you can change the settings so that it actually uses voices on your computer. It doesn't use the internet for this, and we're going to take a look at how to get to that right now. In order to do this, we need to go into the Settings Center. So I'm going to hold down the Insert key and press F2.
Run JAWS Manager dialog. List 1 list view. Command search 1 of 19.
And I'm going to press S for Settings Center.
S Script Manager. S Settings Center 17 of 19. Enter. FS Companion Beta Microsoft Edge. FS Companion Beta Microsoft Edge page. FS Companion Beta. Type your question here. Edit. Blank. Placeholder. Type your question here. JAWS window. JAWS Settings Center dialog.
And we're looking for text processing. So we're going to down arrow.
Preview. Web HT. Forms mode. Text processing closed.
And to open up this submenu, I'm going to press the right arrow key.
Text processing open. 4 items.
And I'm going to down arrow.
1. General closed. 1. Number and date processing closed.
Till I hear
Proofing closed. Language processing closed.
language processing.
Language processing open.
And I'm going to
4
press
items.
the right arrow key again.
2. Detect language based on markup of document and web page. 1 of 4. Language processing. Text processing.
So we can change these and toggle through them by pressing the space key.
Space based on text vocalizer expressive only. 2 of 4.
So if we change these settings, anytime it sees a different language, it will hopefully switch.
Space based on AI predictions. 3 of 4.
So you have 2 options, 4 options. You have this
Space off. 4 of 4.
and off. So we're going to put it back to AI predictions. And I say that a little bit hesitantly because sometimes AI doesn't predict things the right way. And keep in mind, this does not use the internet. This is using information on your computer. So if you have different synthesizers installed, because I have Vocalizer installed, only the English voice, I don't have anything else, it doesn't really have much to choose from. But if I went through and installed a bunch of other synthesizers, it would actually go based off of that. But we're going to put it on based on AI predictions just to see what would happen.
Space based on markup of document and web page. 1 of 4. Space based on text vocalizer expressive only. 2 of 4.
So text vocalizer expressive.
Space based on AI predictions. 3 of 4.
And I'm going to leave it this way because I'm curious to see what's going to happen with this. So I'm going to press enter.
Enter. FS Companion Beta Microsoft Edge. FS Companion Beta Microsoft
Save the
Edge page.
changes.
FS Companion Beta. Type your question here. Edit. Blank. Placeholder. Type your question here.
So we've saved the changes to those settings that we just changed. But if you don't want to change those settings, you don't have to do that. This is another option in order to detect different languages within JAWS to make it a little bit easier to switch. So hopefully it will do that. But remember, it doesn't connect to the internet. So just be aware of that. If you're playing around with these and going through the what's new and trying some of this stuff out, or even going into FS Companion and asking it those questions about how to use that feature among others, make sure that you want that to be something that you're going to use, or if you're reading a number of different things that it may need to switch to, you may want to go enable that setting. I have it, like I said, set to enabled with AI, so we're going to see what happens. I don't know what it's going to do. It may break. It might just go absolutely crazy. I don't know, but we'll see. So this version of JAWS has so many other different features, so many other different things that Freedom Scientific has tried to implement, but I wanted to pick some of the most popular ones. And there's one more that I want to demonstrate, and that's why I actually have part of the Surf's Up HTML challenge open, so that I can demonstrate this particular feature for you. So because FS Companion is still open and it's a web page, I have to press Control Tab to go to the other page.
The web track sample call tracking system. Yes radio button checked. 1 of 2. 1 heading and no link.
So another feature that Freedom Scientific has fixed is when you go from one radio button to the next by pressing A, it will tell you which number of radio button it is in the group. So I'm using part of the Surf's Up HTML challenge to do this, just to demonstrate this feature. So if I press the letter A,
Product and warranty group. Yes radio button checked. 1 of 2.
they've actually made it a little bit easier for us to notify us about how many radio buttons there are. And if we press Control Insert A to bring up the radio button list, they've actually fixed this also so that it will tell us what part of the group it's in.
List 1 list view. Product and warranty. Yes radio button checked. 1 of 2.
So Freedom Scientific has tried to make sure that all of our experiences with JAWS are as hassle-free and bug-free as possible. There may be some times where we run into an issue. We may have a problem that we may encounter. And keep in mind, this is a new version still. It hasn't been out that long. So we may find things that don't work. We may find things that may not work the way we hoped for the first time. Especially if you're making a migration from an earlier version of JAWS to this one, and you have scripts installed, and you've accidentally maybe migrated your settings. Be patient, because all of those things can be fixed and figured out, but they always make those recommendations because they want to make sure that all of us have an idea of what may work and what may not successfully work. I want to also talk about EPUB documents as the last thing and feature that I want to demonstrate and talk about. I don't have any EPUB files, but if anybody has any EPUB documents, you'll notice that it actually will read and behave a little bit better when you're going from one region by pressing R to the other, and you'll be able to have much easier time going through an EPUB document as you did in the past. Those are some of the main things that I wanted to highlight today about the features and changes in JAWS 2025. There are many more features in JAWS 2025 that we didn't talk about today, but I wanted to make sure that you had at least an idea of some of the most popular ones, like figuring out what number of the week we're on, or how to use FS Companion, or language switching, because all of those features are extremely important for us to know, but they're some of the most popular features that Freedom Scientific tried to put into this update. I would like to thank everybody for coming today, but would like to open up the floor for questions now if anyone
The
has
time
those.
is 7 o'clock p.m. The web track. Job F screen sharing meeting. Alt S.
Zoom meeting.
If you have any questions, you can raise your hand and unmute yourself to ask your question, and I will answer your question.
Kathy.
Kathy?
Hi. Okay, I know this may be a very simple question, but does JAWS stand for anything? JAWS?
Job access with speech.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Devin.
Oh, the audio now unmuted.
Yes, good evening. How do you find out what are some of the other additions to JAWS 25?
I am going to send a link to all of you for the what's new. You can actually go into the web resources, go to JAWS headquarters, and go to what's new, and it will list all of the features there as well.
Very good, thank you. I have another question. I'm not sure if this is a JAWS problem. When I go on a Teams meeting, the next time my computer starts up, Teams starts up with the startup. I call up Windows, they remove it. Next time I go on a Teams meeting, next time I start up, same thing. Teams program is starting up on startup.
Madeline Sparks has left the meet.
Is that a JAWS issue? Is that a Windows issue?
It's probably, it seems like a Teams issue, because do you have the software on your computer?
Yes.
So what you would have to do is make sure that it doesn't start up with Windows. I'm having the same problem because I've tried to disable it several times and it won't let me do it. I think it's a Teams issue or a Windows problem. You can actually go and disable that from startup.
Oh, okay, because I've talked to Windows and I've had to, like last 4 weeks, every time I go on a meeting, next day it's boom, I start up and there's Teams meeting again. And oh yeah, I removed it. And then next meeting, oh, let me do this one. And comes back again. But okay. So that's something you just have to live with.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay.
Until they fix it.
Yeah, until they fix it.
Uh-huh.
Or don't, depending.
Or
I'm not sure what they're going to do.
Don't.
That's the thing.
Kathy, your hand is still raised. Did you have another question?
Yes, I did. But since I've already asked the question, let's go to the people that haven't, and then you can always come back to my
Okay,
question.
Nathan.
Mute. Currently unmuted.
That is it's a setting for your startup. You want to just change for Teams. It's in your startup wizard in there in the startup settings. That's where you want to change it so it won't come up.
I'm sorry, say that again.
It's in your startup settings where you find Teams. You can have it so it doesn't start up when you start your computer, then it won't come up. I was able to fix it in mine, and I don't remember how exactly I got there, but I did. It's in your startup settings. So there you go.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Devin, I can try and help you too, possibly.
I'm sorry, Chris, say that again.
I said I can try and help you too.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Chris did great, everyone. Try to
I got a question.
Go ahead,
go ahead.
Kathy.
And that was one was you mentioned something in the beginning about that you're going to send us. I know you're going to send us stuff about, these updates and that, but there was something, I think it was about the history of JAWS or something. that
There
you had-
is it's a link to a podcast, FS Cast, and some of you may be familiar with this name, Eric Damery. He had been with Freedom Scientific when it was Henner Joyce, and they were actually he had been interviewed by the host. I don't remember. I think this was a couple years ago, and they were talking about how JAWS has changed over the last few decades, literally, of what it started out to be and what it's become now. I think this was in 2022. I think he retired in 22. And it's just fascinating to see what JAWS was like and hear little clips of those training materials. Is anybody on here and watching on Facebook and maybe seeing this recording later remember those good old training tapes back in the day? I talked about those earlier. He actually was very instrumental in putting those together, and it's just so interesting to see what JAWS has become from JAWS for DOS all the way up to JAWS 2025. And I might put that link in there just so you guys can check it out.
That would be a great resource.
Yeah,
I
I would
remember the
love it.
training tapes.
Because I would
Mhm.
like to see it's good to know the history of things for
'Cause
when you're thinking about future products and stuff. Also, is there do they have a number or an email or something that you can call them and give them suggestions, like as when people are using this and they say about this or that, and then also that's two. And my third question is, how does this interface with such things as these various digital platforms like Zoom and Teams and that, and then also with things like Google Doc and Word. I mean, is it gotten better? Are there still kinks that we need to make them aware of? And would we do it through these, you
you
know,
can,
things?
I'll put those resources there. There is a phone number that you can contact. You can also email tech support, and they will get back to you. I've sent them many questions, and they have responded. But um, there are there's still issues with programs, even though they've been addressed. Like Zoom, for example, sometimes will be a little finicky with JAWS reading it. But I would say for the most part with programs like this, and if anybody else wants to chime in about Zoom accessibility, at least for us JAWS users, it is probably one of the most accessible meeting platforms out there right now. Teams, iffy. There are so many other meeting platforms out there that are marginally accessible. Google Docs, you can get through them, but they're a little bit difficult to navigate. There are
And what about
associated.
Google Meet? Because we're thinking about platforms. How's
Uh,
that?
Google Meet, I've only used it once, but I was able to get into a meeting with it. Um, another thing that has been done and is still being done is people have written scripts for certain programs. Remember in the beginning when I was talking about making sure that you don't migrate your JAWS settings from one version to the next? Um, let's take a program like Zoom, for example. There are scripts for Zoom that you can actually install so that JAWS has a little bit of a better idea of how to do certain things. It gives us more features. We're teaching JAWS how to talk to the program a little bit better when those scripts are installed, and it notifies us a little bit more about the different things that Zoom can do. Yes, you can use Zoom right out of the box, but the scripts just give it a little bit of that extension to give us a little bit more notification. Let's say I'm in the participants window and I see someone's hand raised. It is set to play a sound when someone's hands up, so I know as I'm up and down arrowing through the list, like it'll make a little dinging noise in my ear when I'm in a meeting, just to indicate that your hands up, Kathy, or you're muted in the meeting. Of course, Zoom has also introduced its own little popping sound when your hands put up, but the scripts for Zoom and other programs just give JAWS that little bit of an extension to teach it to talk to the programs and communicate with the programs just a little bit better.
And this is one follow-up on that, and I'm sorry because Devin has his hand raised. I hope you don't mind, Devin. With the scripts, how do people get those?
For Zoom, for example, I will. There's a website you can go to, harchin.org. I will put that in the sources list. There's a free version of those scripts. There's a paid version of those scripts as well. There are actually JAWS scripts for Microsoft Teams to make it a little more accessible. You also have to pay for those, but like I said, it gives JAWS a little bit more of an extension of being able to function a little bit better with a program that may kind of be accessible, but may not necessarily be accessible. And the person that writes these scripts is totally blind and is also a JAWS user himself. So,
Thanks for that information. Really appreciate it. And Devin, you had your hand raised, and thank you for your patience with me.
Thanks.
Oh, no problem. That was an old hand raised. I just love.
Okay. I'm still in the dark because my alerts are turned off. So,
He's too busy with the tequila. He didn't take it down.
that's nice.
Inside joke.
Oh, okay.
I got it.
Yeah, you got it, didn't you?
The
Tequila.
one thing that I wanted to mention too, for anyone that may have a question about renewing or getting JAWS, if you have an older software maintenance agreement, like let's say you're all the way back to 20. Now, well, okay. We'll say you're running JAWS 15, just to throw a number out there. That's a really, really old version, but let's just assume that you have a license and you're running JAWS 15, just as an example, and you want to get the latest version of JAWS. It's not as expensive as it used to be to do that anymore. If you have a software maintenance agreement, which I've had for a very long time, I think since I first got the software, and you're running JAWS 15, which you'd have to be running a really, really old computer to do that, but you would have to pay the entire upgrade amount from 15 from your software maintenance agreement all the way up to 2025, and I don't even want to know how expensive that would be. However, if you are interested in getting the most current and up-to-date version of JAWS, and you've kept either your software maintenance agreement up to date, they have an annual maintenance plan now. If you have a software maintenance agreement, where instead of paying the full like $400, for example, to renew it for 2 years, you can pay a certain amount per year and still get updates every year. Or if you want to switch from a professional license, which is what I have, to a annual license, you can do that. It's only $90 a year. You can get either 4 or 5 years at a time so that you can have those updates. So if anyone is thinking about getting a newer version of JAWS and you don't want to have to go through the hassle of paying an arm and a leg to renew it, or you don't want to fight with your state counselor if you're going through the commission to say, I'm running JAWS 2019 and I want to upgrade to 2025 and it's going to cost X amount, you don't have to do that. You can get the annual license for $90 a year, or you can put 4 or 5 years on it at a time, and you don't have to spend so much money. They started doing this a few years ago, and I think that this is one of the best choices that they've ever made, because it used to be so expensive to get this software, and the average person just couldn't afford it because you were looking at $1,200, $1,300 a pop, maybe more, depending on where your where your license was. I see there's another hand up.
It's me again, sorry. So if you put a couple of years, I mean, so is it like you pay upfront, like say for 3 years, so 3 times 90 would be $270,
Hmm.
and you're guaranteed that, you're not gonna have to pay a higher rate for the maintenance fees. That's the plus of it?
Yes, if you switch to an annual license and you put 3 years on there, you'll have the updates for the 3 years, and you won't have to
Any increase in
uh,
price?
renew it for that period of time. If you only pay $90, then you will have to renew it uh, every year. But if you pay for 3-4 years at a stretch, you'll have all of those updates for the annual license. For the software maintenance agreement side, um, you have to renew it every 2 years. Or if you're on the annual side for the software maintenance agreement annual plan, which I'm on, you will have to renew that once a year. If you're switching from a software maintenance agreement to an annual license, you are going to get a new form of activation for JAWS. They're going to send you a file that you'll have to download a file to activate it. It's a little different than the authorization number that you used to have if you're going from uh, a professional license. So just be aware that there are some changes, but it's so much cheaper to get JAWS now than it used to be, and I'm glad because it's the only screen reader I've ever used. So anybody else have any questions?
Zoom meeting.
Anybody have any other questions? Besides Cat.
Sorry about that.
I'm kidding.
Ask away, that's fine.
Cut her off. Cut her off.
I could. No, just kidding.
Thanks, Bob.
Sorry, we've got a talking phone fest here.
Well, if anyone doesn't have any other questions, I wanted to thank all of you. Whether you're here right now in this Zoom room, you're watching on Facebook, or you're going to listen to the recording later, for participating in this presentation. Because sometimes it's easier to have someone explain the new features and go through them than it is to try and figure them out yourselves. And that's what we did today. We did this last year. This is the second one we did, and I'm looking forward to doing this again when 2026 comes out, because I'm sure they're going to introduce more features. But another thing that I want to mention too is, just because we talked about these now doesn't mean that Freedom Scientific is done introducing features. They're not. You will get notified if you have your automatic updates turned on of new updates, and you should install those. If you don't, you can of course go to the help menu with Alt H and up arrow to check for updates. But make sure that you download and install those updates, because if you don't, you won't get the new features. If you're in a setting where you can't do that, if you're in a network, you may have to get admin rights to do that, or you may have to download the installer, or they may have to download the installer from the website, which you can still do. You don't have to go through the check for update feature. You can still do it the old-fashioned way if you want to do that. Download the installer that way. But make sure to install those updates, because they will be coming out with new features, especially because Microsoft keeps changing. We may be getting new operating. I think Windows 12 is coming out soon. Windows 10 is losing support, I believe, next year. So just be aware that we're undergoing some technology changes right now, and depending on where you are, you might need to upgrade to be able to continue to be successful. So I'm just letting everybody know that those updates are important. If you are a little apprehensive about installing those and you're not sure if you're comfortable doing that, I would be more than happy to assist. There is JAWS Tandem to do that. There is also another program called Remote Incident Manager where I can get into the computer and do it that way. So there's a number of ways that I can assist. So if you have apprehensiveness about installing an update, please let me know, because I would be more than willing to help if anyone needs any assistance like that.
And we have one more question, Nathan.
Currently unmuted.
Hi, are you going to send out the recording, and are you also going to send out your contact information?
Yes.
So just to let everybody know, the recording is going to go out for this. You may feel free to share it with anybody under the sun. You can share it with the President of the United States for all we care, as long as anybody knows what's going on. Towards probably tomorrow afternoon, evening-ish, that's when this will go out. I would estimate that probably would be tomorrow afternoon, evening-ish. You'll see it go out, and you'll also get a copy of his contact information, our contact information, and every relevant contact info that you're going to need. So I was going to get to that, but thank you. You answered that question right there and then.
Yes, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for Chris? Whatsoever? Anybody at all?
Anything? Any questions?
Ooh, more questions.
There's a hand up.
Jamaica?
Yes, my question has to do with getting it transferred over to JAWS 2025. Does that mean that that I that I will need to try to get the um the scripts re-put into the system from all the programs that I'm actually trying to use on this system? Because if that's the case, I'm probably gonna need some help.
What version of JAWS are you running right now?
I am using 2024, and I'm using a Windows 11 computer.
Okay. Do you have any scripts? What type of scripts do you have installed?
I don't know. I don't know what kind of I don't know what kind of scripts I have on the computer, so I don't even know.
You so you may not have scripts installed, but getting you updated to 2025 is something that I can definitely do. It's a little bit easier if you don't have extra stuff to do, because I have those. I have to be very, very careful about how I do things. So if you if anyone on this call right now, whether you're here in this room or going to listen to the recording or watching on Facebook, if you have scripts that you have to install, that is something additional that you're going to have to do. If you don't, then you don't need to really worry about it. If you don't have any scripts at all, you can actually go ahead and migrate your settings from one version to the next. If you do have scripts installed, and as I said in this in the beginning, then you cannot migrate your settings, because JAWS is going to have a hissy fit when it tries to open up a program and says, "What is this? Why am I looking at something that it doesn't recognize?" So, but I'm more than willing to help you get switched over if need be.
And again, you will have his contact information.
Mhm.
So please feel free to contact him after the presentation. Once you receive an email from him, you'll receive you'll be able to contact him, and he'll be able to help you with anything. And you guys can negotiate what you need to negotiate there as far as that is concerned. And we look forward to him helping you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hang on, one thing. Is that Jamaica Miller?
Yes, it is.
Do you remember me?
No.
Are you the Jamaica I'm thinking of? Did you go to the Iowa School for the Blind?
Yes.
We met when I was in junior
7:24
high.
p.m. 7
My name
notifications.
is Seth.
AP News. Collapsed stab. 17 minutes ago.
Seth
State of
Roos.
rom-coms. Love. Actually, filmmaker Richard Curtis
Yes.
spoke of his charitable causes. The state of romantic
I
comedies.
apologize for that.
Now, ABC
Hey.
News. How an unsettling encounter during a car ride led to the discovery of 10.
Hold on.
Thursday, November 14th.
There we go. Trying to shut my phone up. There we go. Yeah, there's Jamaica Miller. That sounds familiar to me.
Yes.
I think we met before.
Yes.
That's cool.
Well, thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Chris. It was a great presentation.
You're
Thank
very
you for
welcome.
coming.
Thank
And
you for
everyone
coming.
else, if no one has any questions, thank you so much for coming this evening to our JAWS 2025 presentation. I'd like to thank Chris for his outstanding work this evening and his wonderful presentation that he provided for all of us this evening. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about Downstate New York Adapt, you can go to www.dnyadapt.com. You can also email us at dnyadapt@gmail.com. Our phone number is 631-333-6229. And Chris, if you'd like to provide your chapter's contact information, and yours will be separate.
If you want to contact Southern Minnesota Adapt, you can email us at smnadapt, ADAPT, @gmail.com, or you can call us at 507-200-1689. I will be providing my contact information to all of you separately, so you will get my regular number as well as my email address. So, but thank
And
you.
just
Sorry.
one thing. Sorry to interrupt, but Brandon, don't you have another program coming up next week?
Yes, we do. We have our Zoom accessibility training. It's an annual program, and please feel free once that you're all going to get a copy of that link also, and please feel free to register for that program as well. And we look forward to seeing hopefully all of you next Thursday, the 21st.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you all so much for coming, and have a wonderful evening, all.
Have a great night.
Thank you. Great.
Bye.
Bye.